Welcome to Papillion UnScripted. I'm Michael Severe, the place to go to hear from people who truly help make Papillion feel like home. Special edition this time, two of the senior members of the Papillion City Council. We got Tom Mumgaard, and we have Steve Engberg, and you are the most senior, right? November '92.
Seasoned, not senior.
Oh, seasoned. Okay.
Seasoned, yes.
A little bit of pepper, a little bit of paprika.
He has
Okay.
1 year on me, but
Yeah.
I've had more elections.
Okay, because you were appointed initially,
I was
right, to
appointed.
replace someone who left?
Yes,
What happened in that situation? It was January of '94, I believe.
98,
98, okay.
I believe.
I have 94
Well, no,
written down.
I
January
was-
of 94.
I was elected in '92.
Right, 92 in November, and then I have you
Oh,
appointed January of '94,
Yeah.
and then elected November of '94.
You know more than I do. Yes, that's correct.
That Google machine, it's incredible. So you were appointed, what, did somebody have to step away, or what happened?
Yes, one of the two representatives from Ward 4 moved out of town.
Okay,
So there was an opening. I had come to the attention of the mayor and city administrator being involved in a zoning issue where we were fighting some apartments. How's that?
surprising,
I
yeah.
was helping my neighbors fight some apartments.
Yeah.
And I came to their attention with that, and they asked me to get to join the council, and I said yes. I've always known I would never have done it if I had not been appointed. I would never have had the courage to get out there on my own.
And you hadn't lived in Papillion very long, right?
A couple
At
of
that
years,
point?
only
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah, opposed to you, who,
Yeah.
born and raised?
Born and
much?
raised here. Great-grandmother was the first businesswoman here, so it goes back a long ways.
Yeah.
Back a long ways. So this has always been home to me.
Yeah. You guys do have, in fact, a law enforcement background, and you have the attorney lawyer background, like the two parts of the legal system.
Yeah, I arrest him and he prosecutes him.
Exactly, yeah.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk a little about that history. You mentioned your grandmother, your grandfather involved, your father involved, kind of your background a little bit.
Well, my family's been here, like I said, for a long time. My my grandfather was Cypress County Sheriff at one point. He owned a couple of businesses at Papillion, and my great-grandmother ran a hotel here, and the building still exists. So it goes back that far. My mother graduated from high school here, and of course all my kids and everything. So there's been a lot of connection. You know, and I've been in the police here for 20 years. I was a police chief for 10. So
And your office was in this building, right?
it's in this building.
Yeah.
On the same floor, just down the hall where we are right now. So,
That's awesome.
So yeah, I've been going up and down those steps for a long time.
Tom, where'd you grow up?
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
Big family in Lincoln.
And you ended up here because you went to Creighton?
Yeah, I went to Creighton Law School and decided I liked to stay in Omaha, and I stayed in Omaha and lived in Omaha until I moved down here in '92, 30 years ago.
What brought you to Papillion?
Well, we needed a bigger house, and so we were looking around, and I was looking on the outskirts, and I was looking at the lake communities principally, and then a friend of mine bought a house on the golf course here in Terra Hills. I came to visit him and thought, wow, this is a nice place. Let's do it. Let's buy this and build here, and that's what we did.
We talk so much about how the city's changed since you go all the way back. Give me one of the biggest changes, like that would surprise somebody if they could turn back the clock and look at it. Which changed the
Oh,
most,
boy.
would you say?
The most obvious thing is probably because people use 84th Street all the time.
Yeah.
Would probably be the first instant thing they would notice because it used to be 2-lane brick.
Right.
And elm trees up and down both sides, so it was almost like driving through a tunnel of trees. Well, of course, Dutch elm disease kills all the trees, and then they widened 84th Street into what it is today. And as you know, there's still brick under parts of it, but that was all removed. So that would probably be the biggest change, just physically, probably.
What's the biggest change for you, Tom, since you've been here, you think?
The biggest change. Well, the growth, the physical growth, you know. I constantly, after being on the council for 28 years like this,
Right.
You can't help but compare things we're doing today with what we did in the past. And I keep telling myself, well, don't get lost on memory lane, but don't forget what we've done in the past. I'm constantly struck by things in town that were controversial at the time People were telling us we were gonna ruin the town.
Walmart.
And Walmart. And now people drive by and accept them as the most normal thing in the world. And I'm constantly reminding myself that that happens, that things that are change and we can't really grasp whether it's gonna be good or bad, after some time, people just treat them as the most normal thing in the world. And, you know, the shopping centers, you know, the second golf course, all these different things that have been controversial at one time, and nobody even thinks about them now.
Well, what's really crazy, along with what Tom was talking about, when Papillion Bay, the aquatic center, was going to be built,
Yeah, absolutely.
it happened to be built in my ward I represent, and there were a few people, one in particular was totally dead set against it going there. And I recall like a year's worth of probably of protest against locating it in my ward, and this one particular person was having press conferences in the front yard of my house. Roll the clock ahead and get located because we all felt it was the best place for it to be. It was built. We had like a soft opening for the employees and the construction people to make sure everything was functioning right and everything. Well, they happened to invite the one person that objected to it being there because his house was right behind. And I'll never forget my son and I in the pool and him walking over with a big smile on his face and said, "Man, isn't this fantastic? I am so glad this was built here." And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, for a year you made my life miserable. But and then he went on to tell me he had just filed for divorce, and he said, because we built that there, he said the value went up $10,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
So he thanked me for building it there, but you know, it was.
You know, I want to tell you, the first time I had any interaction with the city council was when I came down as a citizen to oppose where you were going to build the swimming pool, Papillion Bay.
Yeah.
I thought it should be up where Home Depot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys disagreed with me, and I was wrong. You were right.
You don't say that a whole lot.
It's in the
Well, you know
exact
what-
place it should be.
I told Tom recently because we'll sit and talk about things that have happened because he and I are the only two really that can compare those kind of notes. But the first contact I ever had with Tom, it wasn't really a direct contact. I found a while back, I found a letter he sent me before he was on the council about the apartments up that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, sure.
And it was a letter from citizen Tom Mumgaard
Wow.
to me,
Yeah.
and I even had the response. I kept the response back to him. And I'd like to think the response would be better now than it was 31 years ago or so. But that's my first foray into knowing a little bit about Tom.
You know, moving here and then covering the news, covered a lot of city councils, and you guys were known kind of as dysfunctional when I first moved here. What changed? How did it get functional?
You want to take that one? It was. Go ahead, Tom. I'll
Okay,
play.
you know, and okay, you're right, it was dysfunctional. I look back and say, well, what was happening was Papillion was changing from the small town to a city. And the method of governing and making decisions was changing too. It was going from just certain people made all the decisions to more people making the decisions. And you know, and it could have been that, well, okay, I was appointed to the city council and I was the outsider. I'd only been there for 2 years.
Right.
And I was known as being opinionated and not standing back and avoiding my opinion. During that time, it became difficult for city government to make decisions because of that change that was occurring. People who were, I don't mean anything negative to them, but they were living more in the past than they were in the future. And that caused dysfunction. And that dysfunction then ran into things like, well, a mayor was elected who didn't get along with hardly any of the council members. Well, I mean, there was a split in the council, 3 or 4 on one side and the rest on the other. And which ultimately led to some people trying to recall me. For various reasons. I don't think it was anything personal against me, but they wanted to go back to where other people made the decisions. And so I went through a recall election that was in part supported by some fellow council members.
Oh.
Yeah, that.
Not me, I wasn't.
Not you, not you. And I succeeded.
Yeah.
I won the election. And I think at about that time, things began to change. New council members started getting elected. One of the council members who had supported the recall then lost his position in the next election. And the method, I think the attitude of how decisions get made in Papillion began to change. And I think that's natural for cities, government and entities that go from a small town
Sure.
where only the leaders make the decision, that's it, to something that's different than what it is today.
You said years ago that you didn't believe party politics belonged in city government.
True.
Do you still feel that way?
I do, because it's such a, unless you experience it, we all have, Tom and I both have our own personal beliefs about different things, but it's really, city politics is much more, to do it right, I think, is you move yourself a little bit away from party politics, because everything that you do, the good thing about city politics is you can see what you've done, sometimes instantly. I mean, on another stage, whether it be county, state, or national, there's a delay. You sometimes don't see for years something you may have done, or so it's more community-based rather than a particular party belief. At least that's the way I look at it.
I've told people who've asked me questions, right up. First time I went campaigning, a lady asked me, what was your view on abortion? And I said, my view on abortion doesn't make any difference when you're on the city council. We don't deal with those types of things.
Right.
Yeah, those kinds of politically charged and issues rarely come up for the city council.
Well, and I think too, going back to what Tom was saying about how the times were changing a little bit, I found that to be the most difficult time in all my time on the council for a lot of reasons, but one of which is I was kind of here I am, somebody that's grown up here and lived here his whole life, and so you have one facet of the council that felt like it should remain that way, and another facet of the council that wanted to move forward, so to speak. And I was kind of in the middle of both.
Sure.
I really had to balance that feeling of experience I had with, we need to also do some things to plan for the future, because we're going to grow whether we want to or not necessarily. So that was a difficult time for me personally, because you have a certain loyalty to people that you've known all your life, but you also have to realize there's some things that need to change as well.
One of the biggest changes in this city happened in July of 2009, overnight, essentially. We got a new mayor.
Right.
Take me back to what it was like that night, and knowing the old mayor was gonna step down, and Mayor Black was gonna get promoted from the city council. I mean, from the city council.
Well, what's interesting about that is it's just a quirk of fate almost. It's something you don't necessarily plan for, but you know it could happen. We were lucky in the fact that who now is Mayor Black, that Dave was the council president at that time, because I've always said mayors as city councils ideally fit what the community needs at that instant. There's been a need to have mayors here that we've had mayors since I've been on the council that just kind of kept the course and really didn't do a lot. And we've had other mayors that have drug us into the daylight of the future and doing different things. And Dave Black was the perfect person. At least I woke up that morning. On the one hand, I got along very well with Mayor Blinn, and I think he was the right person for his time, because we needed somebody like him to take us where we were at to that point. And Dave was the ideal person to take it from that point forward.
Take the baton.
He was the right person at the right time, and he still is. And I think that is something that's unique to the community government, and I think in some ways Papillion, because that's a good example of it. You know, we didn't miss a beat. We didn't lose track of where we were going. And to Dave Black's credit, he understood what was needed. He certainly, as he'll tell you, he wasn't looking to become mayor.
Yeah.
And he'll tell anybody that. But we were very lucky. We had somebody that, and he's a good mix. He gets along well with everyone. He gets along well with people who have lived here for a long time, and he gets along well with newer citizens. But so it was a shock. It was partly a shock because I think it came down to him and I for city council president that time.
Yeah.
And I think how close the community is lucky that that he was council president instead of me. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. You are incredibly consistent whenever we're talking about building, especially when it comes to neighborhoods or properties, about trying to get a pricing for a home for every one of the income groups we have. Starter homes are almost impossible now in Papillion, but how do we make sure that there are homes for all the people that want to live here?
You know, and I over the years I've seen some attitudes of some people that, well, no, Papillion should be the exclusive, the elite. We're, you know, so $400,000 or $500,000 houses are great in Papillion because that's what we are. Well, I don't discount that. I see there's a good brand in that. There's a good image in that. But then on the other hand, I also see people who grow up in Papillion and go get married and have kids, and they want to move back to Papillion, and they can't afford it because we've excluded them. I don't want to exclude those people. It's not that I want more low income or anything like that, but I want more. I think the city is better off if you have a bigger variety of economics. Two, I want to give people more opportunity to live in Papillion. And then I look at people like me who are aging, and I think, well, I'm going to be an empty nester. I'm going to be wanting to downsize. And where do I go? I can't live in Papillion because there's nothing here. So maybe it's a little bit selfish. I'm looking forward to, I'm saying, well, come on, let's get a more variety of the housing here so that the old guy like me who sells his 2-story house can go into a townhome or something like that. I just want more variety in the housing because I think it builds a better city. And so, yes, you know, one of the pitches has been, well, that's what apartments are for. And I'd say, well, yes, apartments fit into they've got one element.
It's transition.
One element, but it's kind of like, again, me, I don't want to live in an apartment. I want to live in a place with a yard. So I want places where people who want to live with a yard can afford to live with a yard and be in Papillion.
You know, as you know, I've really been a big proponent of middle missing housing, which is a philosophy of developing a variety of housing to fit all ages and income levels. I like Tom. I don't necessarily think we need to start looking at low income housing. We just need to have a better inventory of what's available. And we're starting to see some of the developers starting to inject little pieces of that. The Tower District is going in, for example, has some indications of middle missing housing where they have smaller cottages and those types of things. And there's a lot of ways you can do it, but I think you have to provide some incentive to the developers to want to do it. Because let's face it, they're in the business to make money. They don't build houses just out of the goodness of their heart, but there's some things you can do, and the city of Omaha, by the way, is, you know, they're going through kind of the same thing, where they're like 7,000 units short of where they should be for affordable housing, and so they're going through a big study right now, and I keep track of that too, because to see if anything pops up with their study that would apply to here, but it can be done, but it's going to be a challenge.
See, let me build on that. For a long time, I've looked at part of the job of the city council is to build a brand, an image. What do people think of Papillion? I think we've been very successful in building an image that Papillion is a special place to live. Well, you know, the Winter Wonderland, the Papillion Days, those kinds of things. The housing, the relatively high economics and all that. I think that's all good. we need to keep doing that. We need to know what our brand is. We talked about earlier the butterfly. That's part of our brand. That makes people identify, oh, that's that special place down south side of Omaha. I think we can mix the housing up and not defeat our brand.
Right.
And that's just my goal.
I know it's a long terms that you've had, but give me the thing you're most proud of being on the city council, accomplishing.
Tough one.
Boy. I would say, well, and this is going to sound corny, but the one person that I made their life feel a little bit better, that's the most important thing I've done. It's, you know, you look at buildings, you look at other things that we've done, but if I can think back, and I can, to people that maybe were in a difficult situation, that I was able to help smooth that over and give them hopefully a better life, I'm happy. That's the best memory I could have. But if you want to ask a more practical thing, I think of all the things that I've done is Veterans Park.
Oh yeah.
Because that was something that just occurred to me one day walking with my grandson Xavier through what's now Veterans Park, and sitting down with a napkin one day and a cup of coffee and designing it, and to see over the last 4 or 5 years I tried to design it so it would look finished no matter where we were at in the process. So if the council, like Tom said, no, we're not going to spend any money in Veterans Park this year, it would still look finished.
Right.
And if the year after that, Tom felt generous and said, I'll vote for a few dollars to do something, it would look even better the next year. So that's probably what I'm most proud of, because that's one thing that'll be here long after I'm gone. And it's been a lot of fun to see it go from just one small planter of flowers and a Blue Star Memorial the Junior Women's Club started with, to trigger me to do more than that. But that's probably that and the butterfly garden, because Carl Rupiper convinced me to help with that. And I wouldn't trade that for anything either. That's been a lot of fun to do that.
I think I was talking about going back in time. If somebody goes and knew what Triangle Park was and walked over there, now they'd be like, "Wow, that's incredible."
Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I like Steve, you tend to look for physical things that have changes that you're proud of. And I say, well, I don't want to start there. I think I'm going to be most proud of the fact that I have gotten along so well with so many different council members, mayors, staff members, that I think that I have set an example of how to make government function. I think Papillion government over the years has functioned extremely well, and that's primarily because we have good people who get along, have a goal of serving Papillion. And so, and I'm proud to the extent that I've contributed to that.
Last thing. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to add to what he said, I'm proud of the fact of the employees we have.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Because I look at how they have our job, Tom and my job is to instill pride in a community, I think. And it's really, it's a good feeling when you see how all the employees that work for Papillion, the city, have embraced that. You know, they really treat this as whether they live here or not, they treat this as their home, and they're really proud of it. And they go out of their way, the Winter Wonderland and all the lights. And what's amazing about that, they spend months putting those up. And the people that do it, the guys and the ladies that do it, they really don't care whether anybody thanks them. Their thanks is just seeing everybody enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I digress.
Let me just say, I was a City of Omaha employee for 32 years.
Right.
And I came down here and I says, hey, I know who makes a city run. It ain't the city council. They make decisions, but what really makes it work are the employees.
Yeah,
Steve,
yeah.
exactly
Yeah, the
right.
people. The people.
Last thing. What does feel like home mean to you?
Okay, it feels like home is creating a place where people feel like they can walk their dog, play with their kids outdoors anytime, day or night, without fear. They can sit on their front porch and relax. That's what feels like home to me.
Tom?
Yeah, comfortable. I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I don't worry about things. That's what, you know, you go home and you sit back and you relax. That's what it feels like home is like. You can come to Papillion and be comfortable.
Well, we appreciate you guys' nearly 60 years combined.
That sounds terrible.
It's a
sounds-
while.
oh, gee.
It's a little while, yeah.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate it. And thanks for your time coming on.
Well, thanks for asking,
Thank you.
too,
Oh, no problem.
because it's kind of nice to sit with Tom and not argue about anything.
That is good.
And
You know,
you know what's
that's
funny?
been the kicker. We've argued about many things. We've cussed at each other. And then you just go on and, hey, how you doing, Steve?
I always say
Well-
you guys remind me of the two guys from the Muppet Show that are sitting up in the balcony. That's who you guys
Well,
remind
let's
me
not
of.
get carried away. Michael, let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm a little better looking at that. Not much, but you know what's interesting about that, though, is, you know, Tom and I probably agree on, I'm going to guess, I don't know, upper 90% of most things we've ever had come before us. And he and I have stood together against some really bad things that were trying to push their way in. But what makes it unique, though, is on that small percent where maybe he and I would disagree, we could get pretty
heated.
intense and passionate about it. But you know, and I may think there's times he's trying to get even, and he may think there's time I'm trying to get even. But you know, when it comes right down to it, we're still sitting across from each other, and we both, I know, want to do what's best for the community. That's what makes it okay to argue the point a little bit, because I know he wants the best for the city, and I hope he knows that's what I want also. And but we're able to disagree without being disagreeable about it, you know. And
We got something coming up that we're gonna be on different sides, and we're gonna be strongly on different sides.
Well, looking
Then we're
forward to
gonna
that.
walk away and say, okay.
Yeah.
one of us-
what are you talking about?
Let's not keep
One
it
of us
away.
are right, one of us
Yeah.
are wrong, or
Yeah.
maybe we're both wrong.
Well,
Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is.
We'll get
I
to
know
that.
what it is. And but you know, that's what makes it a good council, I think, though, too, is people are passionate about things. You know, people don't sit around the council table and just kind of like, you know, like it's indifferent. Like,
Yeah.
oh well, let me get my hour or two in here. But people are passionate about things. I think that's what makes it good.
Tom,
Sorry.
Steve, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Good,
Thanks.
thank you.
Join us again next time. Again, we hear from someone who helps Papillion feel like home.